Good evening, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hope you guys are doing well. In case you're wondering, what you're hearing in the background is my bathtub water running because I'm still having problems with my water. Big surprise. Really irritating. But hopefully you guys don't mind that. I've been trying forever to get that fixed. But anyway, enough about my personal issues. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have going on right now here. We have snow falling in Chicago, Green Bay. We've already had a pretty significant amount of snow that's fallen across the Dakotas and parts of Wisconsin, especially northern Wisconsin, and also a lot of Minnesota. We're starting to see this snow push off to the east now, so we're eventually going to start to see Michigan getting into play here. Interestingly enough, a lot of these areas to the south of Chicago, even Detroit, could be starting out here as rain. But as we get into the overnight hours, as those temperatures start to drop a little bit, we're going to see this start to change over just in time for the majority of the moisture to arrive over in areas like Detroit, southern Michigan, etc. And of course, we have to keep an eye on the northeast heading into the weekend, which we'll cover tomorrow. And then, of course, we have the south, which is dealing with a little bit active weather as well. Also have to keep an eye on this region over here, as we will talk about that in just a moment. Then there's also this elephant in the room, the atmospheric river back in play. There have been some recent changes from the Weather Prediction Center, and we're going to also touch on that real quick. We've already gone over the setup for this upcoming snowstorm right here, or winter storm. This will most likely have a name attached to it if it hasn't already at this point. I'm trying to remember exactly what the R name is. I'm kind of drawing a blank. But as far as the atmospheric river is concerned, we're already starting to get reports of flooding, unfortunately. And as this area also being in a warming trend, a lot of the snow that's fallen over here is going to melt, which is only going to further exacerbate the situation over there. So let's go ahead and get into the nitty gritty here. So the first thing I'm going to address here, just give me a second. First thing to address here is, if you look at the top of the screen here, slight risk for severe storms now issued for Saturday, March 11th. And then we have a day 4 slight risk as well. The interesting thing about both of these setups is both of them lean into a hail threat, actually, more so than anything else. I'm not sure why my screen isn't loading right now, but look at that. Here's our day 3 slight risk, and this is across parts of the Ozarks here, and then also eastern Oklahoma. We could be seeing a threat for mostly hail. Damaging winds are also a big deal, or also a notable threat, but tornado threat's relatively minimal. Forcing isn't really there for these storms to really just take off in this instance like we have seen in previous instances. Most of these storms will probably be scattered. There won't be a large coverage area as indicated on the map, but basically the synopsis is showing that we'll start to see a little bit of a pull here of moisture heading as we head into mid to late evening on Saturday, and then the dew points will be sufficient enough. We'll look at those as well, but the biggest limiting factor in this situation is mainly going to be the wind shear, which is a key component in supercell and tornado development. So this is why we have our day 3 threat leaning into hail. So we look at day 4, it's a little bit different. So radar scans from Radar Omega. I'm going to turn that off really quickly. There we go. Didn't mean to annoy anyone with that. It gets old after a while. During the live streams, let me know if you want to deal with that or not. It'll probably just throw off my timing with my words like it did there. But this is what we have for day 4 right here. This is more so along the Gulf Coast and southern Mississippi and parts of northern Louisiana. We could see a little bit of action here as well. Again, leaning into a hail threat with this, especially with the lapse rates on this, but damaging wind gusts can't be ruled out with this. Good news is, though, beyond this point, if we look at days 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, look at that. Potential too low for all of them. Or, well, actually, days 5 through 7. Day 8 is predictability too low. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as time goes on. Sometime next week, I was peeping a potential for severe weather as well. We'll get into that as we draw further into the weekend. That being said, that's one of the big topics we have going on right now. Then there's this. Oh man, I don't really look at the excessive rainfall forecaster here too often. Too often, I never was really into it until recently. Really, when I started the channel, to be honest. And I've seen a handful of moderate risk. Never have I seen a high risk. This is pretty alarming here, and anyone that's in this area, I hope you have done what you've needed to do ahead of time, because this rain's already falling and it's not going anywhere. So I'm hoping along the Santa Lucia range here, you guys are prepared for this, because this is going to be a pretty nasty event for you guys. We already knew about this moderate risk coming all the way from areas well north of Sacramento all the way down through Fresno, and even heading towards areas near SoCal. We're likely to see an increasingly dangerous flood threat unfold as time goes on. Really, this comes as no surprise, unfortunately, but to have this kind of confidence is never a good sign. And then as we head to day 2, we also have a high risk as well. This is across the southern part of the Sierra Nevada here, and then across the west coast here too. Unfortunately, it looks like we will have there's a extreme confidence, almost a certainty, almost I would say, because you don't really get these high risk issued unless there's extreme confidence, which is unfortunately the case here. We've had confidence in this for a while, but we're seeing everything come into fruition. So really, at this point, you may as well put up the high risk. So unfortunately, that's what we're seeing there. Thankfully, there's no other areas that are dealing with rainfall here, so we'll be paying a lot more attention to this over the next couple of days. The next thing we're going to go ahead and look at is the rainfall. And I'm also going to turn this water off real quick. Just give me a sec. As far as precip is concerned right now, there's a good bit there hasn't been a whole lot that's fallen. There's been a good bit that's fallen across the southern plains here and heading into the Ozarks. But keep in mind also, as I've said in previous videos, normally these analysis only go up to about 7 a.m. Eastern time. So there's a lot more rain that has fallen over these regions that we have not seen pop up yet. We'll probably see more of this tomorrow morning. The same thing can really be said with the snowfall in this region as well. Because if we look on this, this is where I'm starting to span back towards more 48 hours out. We can see the significant snowfall across the Dakotas, Minnesota. Wisconsin hasn't even gotten any snow, although the heaviest snow has now started to pass through that area. So we're probably going to see this change by tomorrow. And then, of course, the snow towards the far northern parts of this here in Nevada, towards the higher elevations. We're going to see some pretty impressive totals there, of course, as time goes on. And of course, we'll start to see the snowfall totals accumulate more so off to the north and east too. So in the meantime now, let's go ahead and take a look at the severe weather setup, since that's the only thing that we haven't really elaborated on yet. Taking a look at the vorticity here, this is also going to not only give us an idea of what the upper level winds and temperature will be doing, but this will also give an idea of what kind of moisture pull this storm could have. So this is us heading into Friday. Things still pretty calm. Trough starts to dig at this point, and we do see a little bit of moisture sneak in from around here, and this is what will end up sparking our severe weather threat by OOZ. Not a lot of moisture available, but as mentioned in the synopsis we read, those dew points are going to be sufficient enough to generate a few storms. And then as we head towards Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, threat shifts more so towards the Gulf Coast as we get an increased plume of moisture to develop here. Like I said, forcing's not going to be impressive, so I'm not expecting a whole lot out of this. And then as we head into Monday, we have to watch for the winter storm. And now that we've done that, let's go ahead and actually take a look at some of the parameters here. As far as wind shear is concerned, as we mentioned before, and I've been watching this over the last week, nothing really has been notable. Nothing has led me to believe that there is a prevalent threat of severe. There is a pocket that tries to develop here, but by the time we get to the aforementioned time where severe is possible, we have a 40-knot jet, and it's sufficient enough for maybe a couple of damaging windstorms. But by the time it really starts to develop, this kind of falls apart a bit. There's a better threat on Sunday from the looks of it, but even then it's very short-lived. I think this is going to be a very small window as we head into Sunday, and then Monday we'll have to watch and see what this ends up doing as it moves off the southeast coast here. When we look at the moisture and the temperature, that's where things get kind of interesting. I jumped this a little further forward than I want to, but it actually kind of worked out. But you can see that there's still notably warm temperatures over here, but not very impressive. We're seeing mid 60s, some areas getting up to about 70. Sufficient enough for severe weather, and then as we head into Sunday, it's a similar deal. The temperatures are a little bit better across this region for severe weather towards the Gulf states here. We're getting into the 70s and the 80s. Those dew points are going to be nice and ripe, and we'll get a small period where we can expect some severe storms. They could fire earlier in the day too. I'm not going to rule that out. And then, of course, looking at the dew point, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory at this point. Let me make sure I got the time frame in there. So we get a little bit of a moist sector, a little bit of a nose that pops up here where it starts to advect a little bit further to the north here. Starts earlier in the day across eastern Oklahoma, then moves further to the east into Arkansas, and then maybe parts of Louisiana. Then by tomorrow, that moist sector starts to condense a little bit, and we're watching increased activity across the Gulf states. Then as we head into Monday, we lose that moist sector as time goes on. Showers and thunderstorms are really possible across all of the southeast, but the worst of the weather is definitely going to be further to the south here. Can't rule out a marginal risk being issued for areas over towards Alabama, maybe even Georgia, but temperatures at this point are going to be a lot cooler over this region here. We're going to be dealing with 50s, handful of 60s, but temperatures will be on the downtrend at this point. So it's kind of tough to get that those dynamics that we would need for severe to occur here. So we'll go ahead and look at one severe parameter here that is a very key tell here to our hail threat, and that's lapse rate. I've mentioned it before. Lapse rates measure what's going on at the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. The stronger the lapse rates, the more dry air there is, but that is actually oddly a key factor when it comes to severe storms, especially hail and tornadoes. And as we can see here, as we head into Saturday afternoon and into Sunday, we do have some pretty sufficient lapse rates. We're getting to 7 degrees Celsius. Usually about 5 or 6 degrees is pretty good. Once you get above 7, it's pretty notable. And you can see a nice little corridor that pops up right here where we can see the greatest potential for hail. What size that hail will be, hard to say right now. I don't expect anything too significant, but nothing is guaranteed really at this point. I'm never going to be the type that truly guarantees something except for, well, maybe that flood threat. That being said, we go towards Sunday. Still pretty good lapse rates over towards the Gulf states, especially towards Louisiana. We're still getting to the 7.5, even some 7.8s here mixed in there somewhere. Or is it 7.7? But either way, we can clearly see things transgressing over there. And then as we head into Monday, of course, things will start to calm down at this point. So final look at what things could look like with everything all across the board. Winter storms, atmospheric rivers, and severe all in play here. Just heading into Friday, here is our winter storm. good bit of moisture still feeding into it a little bit, clashing with this cold air right here. So there's a potential for some sleet, maybe a little bit of ice. Nothing significant expected here, but northern Ohio along the Great Lakes here, we could expect some increased snowfall possible in local areas. As we head into Friday afternoon, we'll watch this snowstorm transgress into the northeast here. Not looking quite as impressive on the Euro as it did before, but still looking like it's going to bring some snow at least towards New York City. Maybe Philadelphia might be getting stiffed on this one. And then our next system in line here that's going to be causing the severe weather is up north, causing its problems, and we can expect a nice little swath of snow to develop right here across this corridor between eastern North Dakota, South Dakota, right around here. I know this wasn't my best drawing. Really wanted to make that line wider, but hey. But yeah, basically this line, ignore this line. But that being said, as we move this forward, we can see this heading into Iowa, then into Wisconsin, some of the same areas once again, and then we can see our severe weather threat begin to develop here as we head into Saturday night and Sunday. Then as time goes on, we watch this transgress further to the south, and we start to see our setup for a nor'easter emerge. All while, in the meanwhile, both of these systems end up going through the western half of the U.S. here, and we just continue to see that moisture flow heading into these areas where we're starting to see that snow melt, and this is going to be a recipe for disaster across these regions. We're already seeing flood alerts across the western half of the U.S. here, especially towards California. This could be an ongoing problem for the next few days for sure. So if you know any ways to support those people, definitely encouraging you to do so for sure, because they're going to need it. This will be the second one this year that they've had to deal with as far as atmospheric rivers are concerned. It's ridiculous. But we'll just have to wait and see and really hope for the best for these guys. But that's the end of this video here. I've rambled plenty, I'm sure. But if you did enjoy the rambling, if you enjoyed the video, you found the details useful, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Do the double click as well. Share this video to anyone that may be in one of those urgent weather zones. And let me know in the comments what you have going on right now and what you could be expecting over the course of the weekend. But I'm going to get off of here and go to bed so I can be ready for work tomorrow. This has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. You guys take care. Have a good night, and I'll see you soon.